Welcome back to What the Flick. That's Alonso, that's Christy, I'm Matt. We lost a couple of film legends this past week, most notably Milos Forman.
Milos
Forman. The great director, directed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, one of only 3 films that has won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, and Best Actress. In fact, is the second one to only ever do that.
Right.
Yes.
It happened one night.
And Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, Forman won 2 Oscars for Cuckoo's Nest and for Amadeus, but he also directed Hair and Ragtime and Loves of a Blonde and The Fireman's Ball. He was one of the instrumental filmmakers of the Czech New Wave in 1968. And then when the Soviets came in, this is a story from Mark Harris's Twitter feed that I want to share. He goes, Mark Harris, who wrote Five Came Back and Pictures at an Exhibition. A Milos Forman story I recently learned. In 1968, after the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, Forman's attempt to come to America was blocked in part because the Directors Guild, in protectionist mode, argued that foreign directors shouldn't come to the US while US directors lacked work. Mike Nichols, himself an emigre, led a move to turn the DGA around for Forman and many others. He wrote letters and petitioned many DGA exec committee members personally. Mike saved me, Forman said later. P.S. Forman and Nichols worked together when Forman appeared in Heartburn, but there was also an intriguing rumor in 1979 that they were considering co-directing Sophie's Choice, with Nichols handling the U.S. scenes and Forman the rest.
Oh my goodness, that's
Can you
fascinating.
imagine?
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, I noticed that when Milos Forman died, that among the people giving accolades to him was the DGA, and how he's one of us, is one of the quotes that is in the thing from him. So
It took some getting there for him to be one of them.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating when you look at how diverse his films are, but there is definitely a through line.
Yeah.
And he was definitely fascinated by
Rebels and Outsiders.
complicated, difficult men who express those urges usually artistically.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's Mozart or it's Goya.
Or Larry Flint or Andy
Danny
Kaufman.
Right, and so I mean, McMurphy was not necessarily an artist per se, but I guess you could say he.
But he was anti-establishmentarian for sure.
Right, and so that's sort of fascinating how, given the stories you hear about Forman himself and how he was unsentimental and he was difficult, he had this thing for men who were like larger than life and complicated and really exciting. Our good friend Tim Grierson, who has been on the show many times, did a whole thing in Rolling Stone, which you should read, where he interviewed F. Murray Abraham, who has amazing stories about working on Amadeus and how Forman fought for him and Tom Hulce to be the stars. He wanted people who were theater actors, who weren't known, but I guess at one point they threw him a surprise birthday party. He walked in, saw what it was, and turned around and walked back out again. He wanted no part of it. So he was an interesting, kind of no-nonsense guy. Yeah.
There's an early 70s film of his, might be one of his first US films, called Taking Off, which I've never seen, and apparently there's some music rights issue, so it's not on Blu-ray, but Matt Severson from the Academy wrote a lovely remembrance piece about Forman for the Wrap and talked about how that movie really kind of encapsulates his sense of humor, his love of bucking the system, and how, and in a way it's almost sort of a precursor of Hair, whereas like this is a movie that was actually made during the hippie period. I think it came out in like 1971, and then Hair is sort of a look back at that. And Hair is a really exuberant musical. I mean, a lot of people talk about how one of the reasons that people don't talk about Forman more as an auteur is that there's not a lot of showy camera work. There's not a lot of, editing that's calling attention to itself, that he's in a way very kind of a formalist storyteller. But you look at the camera moves in Hair, like this is a guy who understands how movie musicals work.
He's very alive. Yes.
Yeah. I always liked People vs. Larry Flint, one of his later films. And I think that was a movie that it took a while to find an audience. But you wouldn't have thought you would have felt that sympathetic for Larry Flint, right?
True.
But it's a fascinating movie, and he gets really good performances and keeps moving along.
And at the time, Forman said, when I was in Czechoslovakia, they came for the pornographers first. So he sort of understood that in a totalitarian regime, that it's easy to pick off the pornographers because the intellectuals think that, oh, well, sure, yeah, we're not going to be next, and they're always next. And so Larry Flint, for all of his many, the things in the negative category about him, was definitely a First Amendment warrior at a time when it really counted.
Yeah. And Courtney Love is very good in both that and Man on the Moon. And he saw that in her, that she was an actress at a time where everyone just thought
Right.
She's Cobain's wife.
Right, Karazuski and Alexander wrote both of those films, and Peter Shaffer adapted Amadeus. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Fun fact: Michael Douglas's first Oscar.
Yes, for Best Picture.
Because he was
producing.
Yeah.
All right, so the other person we lost this last week, an actor named R. Lee Ermey, most notably played the drill sergeant, the drill instructor, in Full Metal Jacket. He'd done a movie or two beforehand. He was a technical consultant and then ends up on camera in Apocalypse Now, and had played a drill instructor in a previous film, I think The Boys in Company C. Basically, I love the story about how he got the role in Full Metal Jacket. Is he sent something like a 30-minute video of himself just spewing invective and insults without ever repeating himself, to kind of give Kubrick an idea of that's what you're looking for. And Kubrick says, well, okay, I guess I found it. This is the guy I'm bringing in.
He was just going to be the technical advisor on the film, and then before he knew it, he was in front of the camera.
And also what was amazing about it was that Kubrick actually let him come up with a lot of his own dialogue. Let him improvise, which Kubrick was not the most
not down for
guy.
that. No,
and he did it in 2 or 3 takes, which is also not terribly Kubrickian.
Right. He did some other movies that we saw. He's in Seven. He did some serious movies. He's in
Toy Story.
He's in Toy Story.
Yeah. The Frighteners.
He was willing to do some comedian or comic roles from time to time, which was always kind of fun to watch him, just riffing on who he was. He definitely played that same guy. But that role that he plays in Full Metal Jacket is so iconic. That's one of the roles that when you think about what Kubrick brought to the cinema, that's one of the things you'll never really forget.
And the most quotable lines in Full Metal Jacket are all the ones that he surely came up with himself in that.
What is your major malfunction, Private Pile?
Yes, there's so many that I would love to be able to quote right now, but we can't.
Yes, he's very fun in The Frighteners.
Not on Facebook.
When he shows up in The Frighteners, kind of playing it.
Oh
yeah, that's a Peter Jackson movie. He's
role.
basically playing a ghost version of that same, the same thing. And then,
And then he had a couple of TV shows. He had this really fun TV show called Mailbag.
Right.
Where he would answer questions about military stuff in his own kind of charmingly abrasive way. And it was really funny. And then he had another show, I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it was called something like
Lock and Load with R. Lee Ermey.
Where he just talked about weaponry.
Yeah.
But, that's his.
Right, he was a former Marine.
He'd
spent some time in the service, and that was the thing that he could get roles on, and great. But he was, very charismatic, and he was the kind of person that could spew that thing, and you're just fascinated to watch, right? Because I think not every actor can pull that off and make it interesting. And sure, did he play a lot of that over the course of the rest of his career? Sure.
Pretty much.
But then you get to see him.
I think of it like Cary Grant. He had a wheelhouse and he didn't stray too far from it.
Right. So, it's maybe a good time to go back and watch Full Metal Jacket and get a little tear in your eye.
It is
well, maybe not a tear in your eye.
It's always a good time to go back and watch Full Metal Jacket.
Why not?
Yeah, considering you guys just saw Matthew Modine.
Oh, no, you didn't.
No, I wasn't there.
Ben and I went. Ben and I went to Matthew Modine, had this really cool photo exhibit of photographs he took behind the scenes during the shooting of Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, which is also a book.
Is it also a book?
Yes, people can see it.
And Kubrick actually said, go ahead and take these and use them, and it's beautiful.
Right.